Right. Hi everyone. So my name is Torben and I'm from the Australian National University, and I'm just going to talk about consumer face tracking. So before I get any further, let's clear up what I mean by face tracking. This is the concept where the computer is aware of both the offset and possibly even rotation of the user's head relative to the screen, as demonstrated in this image. So how can we use this data? Well, I've been doing my work using it in computer games. But one of the interesting things about this area is it's obviously a consumer product, which means if it's going to have any success, we have to be able to deliver it to the public, which means it needs to be accessible. So what do I mean by that? It means that it can't be expensive. People need to actually be able to get the hardware required for such a system. Also, we need to make it work for laymen as well. We can't exclude people. So if we want to give it the greatest potential, we need to make sure that it is just accessible to everyone. So how do we achieve this? Well, I've done this using a standard web camera and a piece of software known as Face API. So, the Face API software quickly acquires a user's head without even any prior learning. It can handle very rapid movements over a large interaction space, and in addition to this, can even handle contortions of the face and obstructions. So quite an impressive piece of software. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this is that almost all modern computers are normally sold with a camera already built in, and web cameras anyway are so cheap that almost every kind of modern computer is head tracking enabled. So it's really an underutilized form of input. So at this stage you might be wondering, well, how can you use it? Here are some demonstrations for how I've used it for a computer game. The first technique is a replication of the one made popular by Johnny Lee. By altering the perspective of the view, we can allow the monitor to look more like a window into the virtual world. The next technique allows the player to zoom in by moving their head closer to the screen. A slight variation of this technique is to integrate it with the pre-existing zoom function. Another technique is to allow the user to peer around the corners by tilting their head. This allows us to spy on some unsuspecting characters and even plan some tactical maneuvers. Another technique is to control the orientation of the camera using the orientation of the user's head. This provides a bit more energy to the scene and looks a bit more like a handy cam. A variant of this technique is to allow the user to spin around by doing a head flick. The final technique, known as iron sighting, allows the player to aim down the barrel of their weapon by tilting their head to the side, much like they would in real life. This technique becomes particularly interesting when we combine it with a dynamic scope. So as you can see, a lot of these techniques are actually really quite natural. The idea of peering, a lot of players actually came up and told me that they already do it anyway, quite, as just an intuitive reaction to the game. Likewise, the handycam technique just adds a greater level of energy to the scene, increasing the realism, and also increases the player bandwidth. I can convey more to the computer at any given time. So at this stage, you might wonder, well, how's this applicable to the work that a lot of you are doing? So I came up with a few ideas. So the first one is just making the computer more aware that you're there. When you sit down, it automatically turns on. Likewise, if I then, complete what I'm doing and walk away, instead of having a timeout, the computer just knows you're not there, so it turns off. Another idea is the fact that we're replacing a lot of our tactile surfaces with LCDs, so we're losing a lot of the physicality of it. So if we put this in, we could now use this to make our desktops look more 3D, emphasize what program is actually currently taking our focus, and generally just give a bit more eye candy, given that's the flavour of the month. And then finally, one that's probably close to a lot of people's hearts is the idea of modelling. So if we're using a CAD program, instead of having to move the viewpoint around with the keyboard and mouse, we just literally move our heads, look around the object. It gives us a better idea of what's there. We could then incorporate this with the zooming so that we can actually move in and look at a particular vertex just to make sure that it's in line with everything else. So there are some of the ideas, but I think the proof is in the pudding. So I'll now actually show you the system running, and hopefully it won't turn out to be presenter suicide. Right, so this is the system running. It's just taking a bit of time to get my head. So yeah, standard web camera on the top, and it's got my head. So as you can see, if I tilt to the right, no hands. If I look up, it looks up. I look down, left, right, and then also if I roll my head, the player's now actually tilting around the corner. So we can then, if I resume my standard kind of control, we could then use this tactically. So, I can see there's a guy there. So, just gives me a bit of a tactical advantage. Oh, he's got some friends. So anyway, I think you get the idea of that one, as I flee for my life. But it just adds an extra level of control to the game, and just that extra bit of realism. And given that so many game developers are striving to make their graphics better and everything else to increase the realism, this is just a different approach. So, yeah, I hope you found this interesting. I really want to try and, I'm just here to try and push this software out. If you want more information, I suggest you either check my website or feel free to contact me. So, thank you very much.